Some of the study team members are in only if you need, if you would like an index card, if you have a question or a comment, and I'll take some questions, but if you would like to write down a thought, a question, or a comment, and need an index card, if you'll raise your hand, and they will come around, and I can come around too. And we've got pens too, if you don't have. So Claudia has some. So just raise your hand. What we need to know, one, are what your questions are in terms of disaffiliation and the process, and also if there are greater theological questions and those things that you have. As the letter said, we as a study team are going to walk alongside you as we gather insight and wisdom. We do not take it under our purpose to tell you individually what to do. That discernment, as indicated, is between you and God. So as the cards are going around, again, if you have a question. The other thing that input would be helpful, input that was helpful would be processes of sharing the comments. Because one thing we do want to do is create a binder of the written shared comments so that people have a prayerful quiet time to read those and to consider. But if there are other options, to share those with the study team. So as a teacher, I hate to have folks write while I'm still trying to talk, but if you have something that you would like to write, take a few moments to do that. If you have questions at this time, and again, as the last letter said, I do not have all the answers, but I'm more than happy to hear your questions. Yes, ma'am. So let's answer the first question. Yes. So the question is, and thank you for that reminder. The question is, what would it cost for us to disaffiliate? So the number, and again, I've got it written over. So let's make sure we understand that. And Leonard, as the church council chair, has already put in that request. So in order to disaffiliate, a church must pay their current and complete paying their current year's apportionment and pay that same amount for next year's apportionment. And then there is a calculated portion of the pension liability. And so the total of those three figures is $267,100, I think, $26. So we're talking a little touch over $267,000. So in other words, when the vote comes, that amount would have to be that. And I needed to share that with you this morning anyway. So Ann, thank you for asking that question. And again, as the video speaking to the other question, the timeline has not been set, but the desire for it to speed up is certainly a worthy comment to put on that card and turn in, and we would appreciate that. So yes, sir, Dan. Then that is the end of the process. So the question was, if the church council does not approve the church conference, then that will be the end of the process. So, and what that vote is, and I made the statement that the church council will vote, because within that room is a motion and a second. Is a motion and a second. So there will be discussion, and there will be a vote. So what I can't tell you, and Leonard can't tell you, and nobody can tell you, is how each individual will vote. But yes, that's the first vote. Then there's the church conference vote, which is the 2/3. And then there's the annual conference, which is also a majority, a 1/2 majority. Yes, sir.
What is the council's time? The council, when will they?
Well, that is discussion for us to have with the council. So the question was, what is the timeline for the church council? Thanks for the reminder. So the church council is, the absolute deadline for all of this is the end of 2023. But we've got to, the next special annual conference, because the bishop has called a special annual conference on November 19th to address any churches that have voted to disaffiliate to that point. That way, that vote is taken. There is the annual conference as we always have in June. So there will be June 2023 as a annual conference vote. And then most likely the bishop will set up another special annual conference in the fall of 2023 for those churches that have the vote after June of 23. So the church council's got to work within that time frame. Let's see, Ray, then Jim.
John, can the conference, say if we go for disaffiliation and then the conference goes in 2024, goes one way or goes the other, can we reverse the disaffiliation or are we off the diving board?
So the question is, if we vote to disaffiliate and the church conference, the general conference in 2024 doesn't change anything, or then can we go back? That's a good question. Write it down. Good. Jim and
Who are members of the study team and how were they selected?
okay, so Pete Evans, Sam Brake, Claudia Lewis, Ken Winley, Rachel Dawson, and who am I? I'm leaving. Oh, Jan. Hey, Jan. Jan and me. So, and that was a church council, not the entire church council, but that was an appointment, which I was not a part of. I'm sorry? I was not. No, and I'll be honest with you, and I'm going to share it. When I was asked, you know how words roll out of your mouth, I said, oh, I'll be glad to do that. And I stepped back. I said, gentlemen, I have told a lie, because I'm not glad that we have to do this, but and do we need to approach this vote? We've got to consider the process, yes. Yes, 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 ma'am.
I've been asked a couple of questions as the board member, so I just want to relay those questions so that they may be answered. If disaffiliation happens, is the requirement that you join the global United Methodist Church? And what is the difference between the United Methodist Church and the global? Because I have been, as people have discussed it with me, I have heard the opposite of, thinking that the global believes in one thing and the other thing, and that the United Methodist Church. So there's, I think, a confusion as to what is what, and I think that's danced around whenever we're talking about it. We just talk about the issue, but not necessarily what the stance is of one or the other. So if we could clarify that, I think that's going to be important. I don't know if this is an appropriate forum, I just want to.
No, but thank you, and we do have that in terms of previous questions. And I will tell you, and I know we're not all web surfers, but the Global United Methodist Church does have a website that people can explore. And again, it's just as clear as our own discipline in terms of trying to read through it and figure stuff out. But yes, ma'am. The question was, what are that some people still aren't clear on the differences between the global. First question was, do we have to join the Global Global Methodist Church? The answer to that question is no. Once we disaffiliate, we can be independent. Because there are other Wesleyan denominations, so there are options, and the Global Methodist is not the only option that is out there. And then the second question that she had, which obviously we're not going to answer today is what are the differences between the United Methodist Church and the Global Methodist Church? And that's a very valid question.
So you guys are gonna put out material with that information?
We're going to do our best. We're going to do our best. Yes.
I just wouldn't want it to be left to the congregation to their own devices to search a web that gives information that is false and accurate.
Well, and here is the
I want it to come from our somebody.
and that is a great concern. And because when you go through the internet, just because it's on the internet, as we all know, does not mean it's accurate. So, and then once you get to like the Global Methodist, is then discerning what it is they're saying. So we're going to do our best to do that in a balanced manner.
Very difficult, to, extract into words, but I think necessary for our congregation.
Thank you. Other questions? So at this point, you know about as much as I do. So I appreciate you being here. What we will need to do, if you need a few moments, and if you need another index card, we got plenty. They sell them 200 count at the Dollar Tree, so we got plenty. But please take a moment to write if you have a comment, even if it's just a comment, and also if you have a question. Yes, sir.
I was a little confused on what this work did. I had written out one here. And this is a real basic question about what does disaffiliation really mean? Who was disaffiliated? And exactly what are they disaffiliated from? I mean, I was born in this church, and it's the church that I was baptized in, so forth and so on. Would we, as a church, as Ann Street, be disaffiliated from what the church, what the residents want the church to run, or are we disaffiliated from the traditional church that we all know and love?
So disaffiliation in this process means that a church would no longer, they would separate from the United Methodist Church. Now, does that mean they have to stop being a Methodist church? No, that does not mean that. They will no longer be part, because, and again, I'm not going to age you, the United Methodist Church is younger than both of us in terms of 1968, that denomination.
I remember when Methodism became United Methodist.
Correct, that's right. So that's part of our history too, and that's also the history of our species in terms of differences and but to answer your question, disaffiliation means we would separate, we would no longer be part of the United Methodist Church, that denomination.
So it is United Methodist Church, then, sounds like it, and I understand everything, every organization, person needs to evolve and needs to change, but it seems like to me the decision here is the reverse of what it ought to be. I mean, if people don't like the traditional United Methodist Church, let them disability.
That is, I cannot dispute that, but it is a procedural question. And I will go ahead and state this, as I said in the video. This is a gracious plan of separation. And yes, I hear what you're saying, but that is not a reality that we face. Yes, Chuck.
Do we have access to all the money that people have given us in the past that we use to maintain this building and things? Do we lose that money, access to that money?
So the disaffiliation agreement, once we pay the $267 and we go through the process, the church, keeps the property and the assets that, for example, and again, I'm not completely up to speed on all this, but the endowments, for example, if the language of the endowment agreement up in Garner speaks to staying with the United Methodist Church, then that stays with the United Methodist Church. But most of our assets are not limited by such agreements. So our assets, and that's the graciousness of what our annual conference is doing, because they're not putting any other financial requirements on a church to leave. And again, I don't want to get in the business of looking at what other churches or annual conferences are doing, because we have to work with what we have within the North Carolina Conference, which is a gracious opportunity for us to have this discussion and decide where we are as a church. And are there differences? Yes. Will there be hurt feelings? Yes. And that's why we got to, just like we're family, so we got to treat each other with some love and gentleness. So Chuck was speaking about the assets of the church and disaffiliation. There's a lot of money that comes with running a church, and there's a lot of logistics too if we disaffiliate, in terms of pastoral leadership and those things that we would have to take care of.
Just what it say to me, simple things, say that's what we're asking. Something happens in this church we don't approve, address it right then.
So those will be the comments that we want you to share, and as we discern processes for sharing that. So make sure you capture that. I would capture that, and I know some of us aren't good writers, I understand, but as much as we can capture in writing and share, the greater opportunity folks will have to read it. Yes, ma'am, Rachel. The email address, and we'll need to get this out also, but study team, one word, at AnnStreetUMC.org. It's Ann Street, whatever the church is. Yeah, I think it's Ann Street spelled out, UMC.org. So everybody staff-wise, except Taylor, they have so-and-so so it's the same. So it is a dedicated email address through the church. Yes, ma'am, Julie.
What is the deadline for all these comments?
That is a good question. I would not wait too long. I can't give you a definitive. The study team will meet Friday, and so hopefully we'll have more to share after that. But I would not, if you have stuff that's on your heart and on your spirit to share, please go ahead and get those thoughts written. Don't wait for a meeting. Go ahead and get your thoughts down on paper, get your legal pad, write some notes, come back to it, pray about it, put it into a final form. So start giving, if you feel strong enough to share thoughts, and we want you to, start preparing now your thoughts and your meditations and your Bible study and everything that you need to do to have some discernment on this. Y'all are starting to look like my first period biology. So anything before we, that was assuming they did wake up. Yes, Lee.
One more question.
Yes.
Going back to the church council.
Right.
If they make a vote, and it's one vote done, do we have a chance to change that, or is that the only vote the council will take?
Well, in terms of, if the question was, if you're saying if they vote in favor of disaffiliation or.
Decide to leave it alone and stay like we are, is it over with for us?
So, and again, so the question is, if we vote to not disaffiliate the church council, can there be another vote later on, a reconsideration of the vote? And so, depending on which set of parliamentary rules that anybody, let's say that I voted yes, whatever. But get my thoughts. So the only people who can make a motion to reconsider a motion are the folks who voted in favor of it. So if I voted against something, I can't bring that up again as a person who voted against it. So, and I'm going to go ahead and this is an editorial comment. If you're on church council, come to a church council meeting. Because we have probably less than half who actually attend church council meetings for whatever reason. But I'm just putting that out there. When you have 14 people at a 30 to 40 member board, so please give that some thought and pay attention to when this information comes across, because that will be, because one of the jobs, and that's why I appreciate y'all being here, is for us to be sources of accurate information. We're not all going to agree, but if we can at least indicate what is, and not worry about, if you hear a rumor and you need clarification, call me, call Taylor, call somebody before you start spreading it. Because I heard we split last Sunday. I heard, yeah, I did. We split last Sunday. Y'all probably didn't know that. But those are the kind of rumors that fly through Carteret County through various means. So if you hear something, just don't share it without verification. If you read it on a church document, or talk to somebody before you start sharing. So, Will, thank you.
John, to clarify, the church council is not the ones making the decision to disaffiliate. The church council, correct me if I'm wrong, the church council will be the one deciding. There's one of three options to decide for the church conference, which the church conference will be the one making the decision to disaffiliate.
So to go in reverse, so the church conference would, yes, make the decision to disaffiliate. The church council is now the only pathway to allow that church to, because it's what you're doing. If we vote to have a church, if the church council votes to have a church conference, then the call goes to Reverend Strother, the DS, and then he sets up with Taylor the date. Here are some dates. Which one works for you? Then at that point he puts out the official call, and that's where the 120-day window starts. Is out. Yes, it's in the discipline, but again, because 2553 creates special, I guess there's flexibility for each conference as what are the, and so the website, and you can go, if you haven't, you can go to the United Methodist, the North Carolina Conference United Methodist Church, and it is convoluted, but you can eventually get to the disaffiliation. But yes, number 3 under the church part of disaffiliation does speak to the church council having to vote to call the church conference. So, yes, ma'am, Karen.
I have a question.
Yes.
We have a special de-affiliation situation here that we have a deadline. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we as Methodist Church members now have a disaffiliation protocol that is in general? Like 10 years ago, if you wanted to disaffiliate your church, was there a protocol for that?
So the question is, we're looking at a disaffiliation process. Has there always been a process to leave the United Methodist Church? And again, those that know better. So the answer to me would be yes, but there is also the trust clause that if you were to leave, then, because this building belongs to the United Methodist Church, not to us. And that is just part of the United Methodist way. So yes, you could have left, but you also were leaving the building and your building and the money in the bank. So yes, you could. There was always a process for a church to leave, but it's physically the people leave, and everything stayed with United Methodist Church. That's where, again, and I know some people may not agree with the graciousness, but that's where because the trust clause says it all stays with the United Methodist Church. We're the ones that. But so the current 2553 says if we fill in these boxes and we pay this amount, then we get to keep the church, your building, the assets. So,
Okay, so then my question is, if we don't take an action of some sort before the, whatever, 2023, as far as disaffiliation, then we will go back to the original process, because this is just this window of opportunity to keep our assets and disaffiliate. Is that?
so the question that Karen has is that if we let the clock run out, and will we revert to the old one? The great unknown is what is going to happen at General Conference 2024. Will there be a gracious exit opportunity voted on? We don't know that. So if we let the clock run out, we're heading still into the unknown as to what's going to happen at General Conference 2024. So I can't answer that question because I don't think anybody knows the answer to that.
So can I clarify, in essence, what we're doing is we're trying to make a decision based on what we think will happen in 2024. Because if we don't make a decision before what we think will happen in 2024, then at that point we would not be spending $277,000. We would be essentially buying all of our assets back from the United Methodist Church at market value. Is that in essence what we're
Well, you're speaking of the trust clause. So what she's asking, if we don't disaffiliate now, if that's the choice of the church conference, then are we going back to where the property stays with the United Methodist Church? Did I get that right?
I'm just clarifying that we're trying to make a decision based on something that we don't actually know what's going to happen in 2024.
Yes, that is part of the,
And
yes.
the reason we're trying to make that decision is a financial reason, because if we don't make it by 2023, then should 2024 change, we go from, if we wanted to then take our assets and move from that, we would then go from looking at 277 versus what this and all of that is worth, if we needed to buy it from the United Methodist Church to move on, in essence.
So what she's saying, and I'm going to piggyback on that, and then I appreciate your patience because I think the Baptists are going to beat us, sorry, to lunch. So there is the financial aspect of, if we disaffiliate now, we're talking 267. But if not, then we either just leave and go have a church somewhere else, or we buy all this stuff, which we're talking a lot more than that. Here's the other, and this is where I'm going to piggyback. For some of us, it is we are expending spiritual and emotional energy on this issue, and we want to get this past us so we can keep on making disciples of Jesus Christ by the sea and throughout God's creation. That's another aspect that people are looking at. And another thing is that we need to know where this church stands, and this is going to be a personal statement on my part, and the church conference is going to be the only way to know that, because you can take all the surveys and straw polls you want, but it's the people in the room that day, professing members voting, that's going to make the decision, which that's tough, because then you sometimes have small percentages of your membership making a decision. Yes, Pete. And then May. Y'all fight it out. So she's asking, can we postpone? First, we can do nothing and just remain United Methodist. That is an option. But if in terms of the agreement that we're looking at, it runs out in 2023. So what we don't know is what will be the new opportunity in 2024. Is it going to be the old trust clause? Is it going to be something voted on in General Conference? We don't know what that agreement is going to be. And what? Correct. Oh, I'm sorry. The end of 2023. Yeah, December 31st. So that's part of what we're looking at as a deadline for this current agreement. What the agreement going into 2024, we not sure. Pete, then Linda.
Am I correct in
Correct.
For those individuals who are members of the church council, affirmative vote merely indicates they want to go to carry out the vote of the church conference, even though they may personally object to any move or maybe full move. A vote by a vote by a church council member, that vote cannot have the church conference does not require that member to vote one way or the other at the church conference. It merely expedites your neighbor to get to the point where the church is whole. Is that right?
That is correct. So what Pete is saying, for clarification, so a church council member may vote for a church conference, so not because they want to disaffiliate, but because they want their church members to have a voice in the process. So yes, so voting for the church conference does not mean you're going to turn around and vote to disaffiliate. So it's kind of like seconding a motion. You may want to second the motion because you want to trash it in discussion, not because you're in favor of it. So, yes.
So, but really all of this, all the conversation that we're having is predicated on the fact that we do not know what the North Carolina Conference is going to determine related to human sexuality in 2024. Some are making assumptions, and so this financial incentive, anyway, it's all based on the unknown. We do not know the direction of the United Methodist Church related to human sexuality, even though we have an issue to begin with. Is that correct?
So what she's asking is what we're doing is making decisions based on something we don't know in 2024. So yes, the great known is that a lot of this in 2024 is unknown. So yes. And we need to start closing out. So Julie, you had your hand up, and then we're going to start closing.
Answer Linda's question. Our conference this year voted on resolution 7, which was a reiteration of what they voted on in 2019. And Haley, correct me if I'm incorrect about this information, but they voted their resolution basically boiled down to they disagree with the way the discipline stands now. They want to see the change of allowing all kinds of things, not just this one topic, but it's more than just the homosexuality issue. So we know that our conference as a whole, not everyone in the conference, but the majority voted on a resolution that completely goes against what the current discipline stands. That gives me any indication where it's at.
Well, and it is still the unknown, because what one conference does is not the general conference. So yes, that's why we got some praying and discernment. So let me thank you. Did you want to?
Yeah, I thought because I kept hearing one of the questions that kept coming up was, wait a minute, why are we in this position and now we have this deadline and we don't know what's going to happen in 24. Part of what happened that led to this is this paragraph was written in 2019, and they were sure they were going to have general conference in 2020, just like everybody thought that we were going to have general conference in 2020 like we were supposed to. So this was a temporary stopgap, and then they didn't have general conference in 2020 because of, guess what? COVID, right? And then they didn't have it in 21 or 22. So they're right now planning to have it in 24. So that's why it doesn't seem, it's not convenient to us to have these deadlines, and we don't know what's going to happen, and should we wait? And that is hard, but part of it is because of fallout from a collateral damage from COVID, essentially. I'm be glad. I have to go lead the new member class. They've been graciously waiting for us, so I'm going to need to excuse myself. But you guys need to do what you need to do. But keep praying about this and keep journeying together with us. Let's thank John and the study team for their hard work. Thank you.
All right, folks, let's have a quick prayer, and then let's go get some lunch. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to gather as your family. Again, just give us wisdom and discernment and love and grace and kindness for all. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you. If you have cards, if you'll get them to Claudia or Pete, they're on strategic sides of the sanctuary, or you can bring them up to me.